A Wyoming judge has dismissed a lawsuit contesting a transgendered woman's admission into a sorority at the University of Wyoming. Because the sorority did not have a definition of woman in the bylaws, it was considered undefinable by the court, and the court was not going to define what a woman is in order to say that the transgendered woman did or did not belong. So with no definition of what a woman is in the sorority bylaws, the court ruled that it would not impose the sorority's definition of a woman, and so the court was left with, we don't know what a woman is, therefore we are not going to decide whether or not this transgender woman should be allowed. To be fair, there was no definition of what a woman is when the bylaws were written and drafted, because it was well settled what a woman was. That is, until now. This is the legal code, and on this channel we discuss various legal topics and public policy and different laws that are coming down the pike. Occasionally we touch on pop culture or celebrity shenanigans, but only if there's a legal component that which you can learn from. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course share with anyone else you think will find value. Also, I am a real life attorney, so if you have some concerns regarding your small business, whether to trademark, whether to copyright, whether you're legally protected, then there's a link in the description box for you to reach out to me and speak with me during the consultation. I'm one of those attorneys that do not hold back. I let you know what you need to do so you could go on your merry way with all the information that you need. I'm not one of those that hold back information so that you could continue booking sessions with me. I'm a solution-oriented person, and that's how I built my practice, to give expedient solutions, to be as honest and transparent as possible, and it has served me well to have a thriving, successful law firm. So if you're interested in working with me, if you just have a few questions and you just need a legal mind, some legal insight, you can schedule a consultation. Also, I have facilitated a medical tourism trip because so many Americans, 40 million Americans, are underinsured or do not even have health insurance. And the only hack I see to solving this healthcare crisis is for Americans to travel abroad in order to see healthcare. It's not a solution for you to allow your health to decline because you cannot afford it, or you cannot see a doctor, or you cannot get a referral. The solution I see is to take charge of your predicament and travel to another country where there are doctors willing to help you at a fraction of what it would cost you to receive the same care in the United States. So I facilitated this trip for 2 weeks, which is not only an opportunity for you to see doctors, get blood work done, get scans, get all sorts of diagnostics that your insurance would deny anyway if you're in the United States. You can get all of this done without any administrative rigmarole. It's done in an efficient and cost-effective manner. So if you have some tests that you need to do, or you need to see a doctor, then I invite you to begin thinking about becoming a medical tourist, because like I said, there's no other solution. America is not going to magically wake up one day and offer universal health care, because the powers that be are benefiting from the dysfunction of the medical industry. I have traveled to different countries and seen physicians. They do medicine differently abroad as opposed to the United States. Abroad, it's a care concern model, whereas in the United States, it's a market-driven model. So just off the bat, you'll be treated differently, like a human being, rather than a chart number, 20 minutes with you, give you prescription drugs without any medical history, without getting any information about your concerns, your lifestyle. It's done differently abroad. So if that's a concern for you, then rest assured these doctors have been vetted and they believe in practicing community health. Also, many of these doctors that are on my roster have been educated abroad. So if it's a concern whether or not they speak English, yes, they speak English, and those who don't have translators in their office. They've been educated in Europe, the United States. With that being said, Colombia has also outranked the United States and Canada when it comes to healthcare, coming in at number 18 in healthcare, surpassing the United States and surpassing Canada, which is why many Americans, Canadians, and even Europeans are traveling to Colombia in order to receive care. Colombia is internationally renowned for how well their healthcare is at a fraction of what it would cost you in other developed nations. Many people travel to Colombia for healthcare. Why not you? I know more and more Americans are beginning to think about traveling abroad and become medical tourists because the cost of receiving care is cost prohibitive in the United States. So if you want more information about the trip, the link is in the description box. It's a flat fee, which includes all of your diagnostics, your visits, your initial consultations, and your exam, as well as your 2-week accommodation and your meals for those 2 weeks. So it's very, very economical for many people. If you have any other questions about the trip, then you can reach out to the email that's also provided in the description box. Now, without further ado, let's discuss the controversial discussion about transgenders, women entering women's spaces and what that means for our society moving forward. So this case regarding the transgender woman entering sorority in Wyoming has received a lot of public attention because it's basically a transgendered woman's fight to be accepted in places that traditionally they are not accepting in, such as in women's sports, women networks, women's gyms, spaces that were created for women to compete as well as feel safe. So in the lawsuit, 6 members of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority challenged Artemis Langford admission as a transgender woman. Langford, who was born as a man and on his license still says he's a man, now identifies as a transgender woman and uses the pronouns she and her. The sorority sister who sued said Langford's presence in their sorority house made them uncomfortable. The lawsuit even portrayed Langford as a sexual predator because of her behavior, and the lawsuit implied that she wanted to be admitted in the sorority in order to lust after the young girls. The sorority girls complained that Artemis was aroused when watching the girls. Also, the sorority had a GPA limit that denied an applicant if their GPA was not 2.9 or better. Artemis, on the other hand, had a GPA of 1.9, but was still allowed admission, probably to avoid backlash from the transgender community, who would probably be accused of discriminatory conduct toward a transgender individual. One of the sorority members was even quoted in saying, "It is different than living in the dorms, for instance, where men and women can commingle on the floors. That is not the case in a sorority house. We share main bathrooms and even bedrooms. There's a more intimate setting in the sorority house." What this case is really about is whether a biological man who's now identified as a transgender woman shall be allowed to be admitted into women's only sorority. This is not necessarily about Artemis' behavior. Anyone can misbehave in a sorority, and that's not the grounds for a lawsuit. The question is really about, should biological men be allowed in sororities? This lawsuit speaks to the problem that the transgender community often ignores for the sake of inclusion. There are those who may not be sincere about the identity, but use it to gain access to women's spaces because of curiosity, fetishes, or worse, to cause harm. The rhetoric of inclusion neglects that women have a biological reality that deserves to be protected. And as a society, we have always strove to protect women, knowing that they are different, face differences living in society. Yet the trans movement does not speak to disingenuous actors who will use their gender identity to gain access to women's spaces, bypassing traditional restrictions. But bad actors may be given an all-access ticket to places they would traditionally be banned from, and then now be allowed to fetishize about young women with no recourse for the women. Now, Artemis got a front row seat into the inner workings of a woman's only secret society, and probably had a hard time containing himself. There is no way to know if one is sincere or bad actors until they actually do something, unfortunately. But based on the evidence argued in the case, Artemis did violate boundaries and make other people uncomfortable. Transgendered are still not officially a protected class from discrimination in sorority life because single gender organizations like the Girl and Boy Scout are exempt from federal sex discrimination law. So they're legally allowed to discriminate based on sex. The National Pan-Hellenic Conference is the largest Greek umbrella organization for women, overseeing 26 sororities that count over 4 million undergraduate members and alumni. But only 3 of those sororities, Delta Gamma, Sigma 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 Sigma, and Kappa Kappa Gamma, have formal public policies saying that they welcome transgender members. The National Pan-Hellenic Conference, which is staffed with adult professionals, does not hand down specific policy guidelines for each sorority. The 26 single-sex women's organizations that constitute the National Pan-Hellenic Conference are sovereign bodies, which means they set their own membership standards. This leaves the decisions on whether to accept a transgender Rashi to 18 to 22-year-old college women. So they are a self-governing organization and get to set the standards of admission. Some sorority members believe that if a transgender wishes to join as a woman, then he or she should do the total transformation before completing the pledge. It's not appropriate for a man who is still 100% male physically to join a female sorority. Now, Congress enacted Title IX to achieve sex equality in educational institutions that receive federal funding. Title IX requires that these college, universities, whatever they may be, to provide equal opportunities to both male and female students within its educational programs and activities. Yet Title IX does not affect fraternities and sororities. Rather, it only regulates the university. Congress specifically designed Title IX to bind the university, not the fraternal organizations. Under the language of Title IX, to retain federal funding, a university must recognize only social fraternities and sororities that have a membership primarily of students attending an institution of higher education. Title IX's language says nothing about fraternal organizations and their single-sex status. Importantly, it does not impose any requirements on fraternities and sororities to remain single-sex to benefit under Title IX's amendment. It simply permits a university to recognize single-sex fraternities and sororities without violating Title IX and goes no further than that. All aspects of membership decisions are, including whether or not to admit transgender students, remain solely with the sovereign organization. Again, not even with the National Pan-Hellenic Conference. So what should fraternities and sororities do? Well, because Title IX preserves their identity, define their membership, fraternal organizations are empowered to address the inclusion or to not include transgender members. So you may be asking, can fraternal organizations say no to transgendered members? Yes. Under the language of Title IX, fraternal organizations have full latitude to say yes or no to transgender members. Constitutionally speaking, however, the answer may be less clear, but a fraternal organization has a First Amendment right to determine who is and who is not a member. In the same way that a fraternity can say no women and a sorority can say no men, both organizations may also say no men, women means no transgender members as well. An organization may therefore decide that its history, its governing documents, strongly oppose the idea of transgender membership on any level. As transgender rights continue to gain momentum, this confronts the question of the erasure of women's spaces. I cannot mention women's spaces without thinking about religious societies, such as Muslim societies or Abrahamic religions, where gendered spaces go back thousands of years in Muslim society. The public realm in Muslim society is historically gender segregated, although this is changing now. These societies have laws which forbid free mixing between men and women when alone. The objective of the restriction is to keep such interactions at a modest level and protect the sanctity of women. We're not looking at extremism that is known in Afghanistan under Taliban, where women are segregated from men in public and do not enjoy equality or equal access to employment or education or anything. But societies where in Islam, women have the right to equal access to employment and education while still having public spaces for them to just be women. In these spaces, women-only public spaces, women undertake activities that are by them and for them, thereby reinforcing the existence of separate structures. Now, during the Industrial Revolutions is when we, for the first time as Homo sapiens, as humans, for the first time we see so much more interaction between women and men in public. Before that, women and men were both working at homes on farms, but as factory work emerged, this was the first time historically women were in spaces with men for 8, 10, 12 hours a day. Now women are in public spaces as much as men, and no one even blinks an eye. Yet sexual harassment and other forms of sexual violence in public spaces are on the rise. It's an everyday occurrence for women and girls worldwide. In urban as well as in rural areas, and in developed and developing countries, women and girls experience and fear various types of sexual violence in public spaces, from unwanted sexual remarks, to touching, to even sexual assault, and at worst, femicide. What the transgender movement ignores is a woman's safety. A woman's safety is ignored and dismissed for political points. Most people probably do not have a problem with the transgender community, but people find it problematic is that the imposition that violates other people's comfort, and it's normal, this has to become normalized quickly. It's one thing for a biological man to identify as a woman, but it's another to masquerade as a transgendered woman in order to gain access to women's spaces. Women's feelings have been invalidated by saying that he identifies as a woman, then women should accept it and be comfortable with it and not raise an eyebrow. There's no empathy in that argument. But back to the case. Do I think that the judge made the right call? Not necessarily. To sidestep the settled scientific definition of what a woman is, he pretended that women don't have a scientific definition and that it's open to interpretation. The sorority was formed as a woman's only organization. In fact, the word sorority in its title, which means organization composed of female students in college and universities, for the judge to now say, we don't know what a woman is, it's an obscure thing that we've never defined, seemed disingenuous, and perhaps he didn't want to experience the backlash from the transgender community by ruling in a logical way. Let me know your thoughts about this case. What do you think more and more sororities are going to do? This may mean that more sororities have to revamp their bylaws if they want to deny admission to transgender women, as well as fraternities revamp their bylaws to deny admission for transgender men who want to join an all-male fraternity. Let me know your thoughts. It's a very controversial topic, and we do have to approach it delicately, but in some respects, we do have to point out the obvious of what's going on here. And many people are afraid to put their foot in it and stand up for what is obvious. In this case, the judge was probably reluctant to define the law because he did not want to experience the backlash of the transgender community. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye-bye.